That second piece. Good evening and welcome to Mindful Live. Mindful Live 238. We are on right now. Welcome. It is the 13th of the 6th. Thank you for being here. We're talking floods, rainy season and floods. The obvious. They go one goes with the other. And you know, as I was saying, that area of land next to the river is literally called the floodplain. Rooney, I do not appreciate the kind of slander and hate I see for geography inside of the live chat. I will not have you. As a moderator, you should know better. If you were not a moderator, you would have been muted already for such hate against geography. It will not be allowed at all. Never. Anyway, yes, that area of flatland around that is right next to the river is called the, like, listen, I don't know if anyone in my life here lives in Lapai Gardens in Caroni, or if anyone knows where Lapai Gardens in Caroni is. Listen, if you live in Lapai Gardens, your backyard is a levee, a little elevated bit of dirt, a dirt mound into the Caroni River. I do not wish floods on anyone. I wish you never face the horror of a flood, but I mean, like, at some point we have to be reasonable. Now, as I was saying in the earlies, there is a historical side to it. I remember about 2 years ago, I did a deep dive on Indian Arrival Day and the historical realities. And listen, some of those British colonists did some evil doings. They did some evil doings. They did it in many of the places. When they left India, they left it in shambles. When they left here, they left it in some manner of shambles too. And they purposefully placed some Indian people in swamplands and low-lying lands, and people have become accustomed. That's now their familiar land. It has been in their family for years, and yes, you could say they should move and all of that, but it's not always as easy and cut and dry as that. So you could have pity on people living in such a situation because they may not have put themselves in that place in the first place. I understand that. And as I was saying, when I'm looking at what we're doing to alleviate some of this, it seems like the go-to method is to dredge the river. Clean and dredge the river. I did geography. I did environmental. Cleaning and dredging the river isn't the automatic go-to solution to these things. I will for you to see by me and one come to clean. That's Kelly talking about. It was my happiest tree. It didn't work when my geo teacher said it. It won't work when you say it. It was my happiest tree. Wow. Listen, if I was your geography teacher, if you got the 3, you wouldn't have been happy about it. At least we'll put it that way. I'm not promising that you'd have gotten a 1, but if you got the 3, you would have been disappointed. But yeah, cleaning, what are we talking about? We're talking about floods. We're talking about the flooding currently going on. And yeah, I'm looking at the dredging. This is happening right in my community. One of the main access bridges through the back road in my region. I'm looking through the entire dry season. I'm watching these excavators. They're clearing the river upstream. No problem, Amani Bailey. They're clearing the river upstream. If you open a river wider upstream and it's coming to a narrow bridge and you do not rebuild a bigger bridge, what do you think is going to happen when a greater volume of water reaches the small bridge? And then they're enlarging the channels. Amani, thank you, Amani. they're enlarging these channels upstream and straightening them. So all of the water from the areas upstream where may have flooded before, you could pull down some of that water from Caparo and send it down faster down into the Gulf. But it doesn't exactly work like that, because either way it has to slow down before it enters the sea. So you cannot remove the flood. You could relocate the flood. And now all of the bridges coming further down are now washing away. Surprise. And the floods still happening. Same thing I was telling my partner on our way home from work today, Nathan. It will bottleneck. Bro, I'm seeing it. The bridges are washing away. Obviously, that's what's going to happen. And listen how you could tell it's that they changed the volume of the waterway. The bridge is washing away, but on the other side of the bridge, most of those bridges were built around slower parts of the river, so very likely there would be a corner close to the bridge, a bend in the river close to the bridge. That bend now is eating away, it's eroding, because the water coming through under the bridge is coming through at such a volume because it's squeezing into a bottleneck and coming through, gushing, eating away the far side of the bridge. You're seeing it over and over and over, and I'm thinking, wait, aren't there engineers inside of these ministries? Don't they have all the money to hire the best of the best of the best? Would love to know the contractor who did that beautiful job. Listen, here's the way how those things go, Denicia John. Plausible deniability. The contractor, very likely, this is what's going to happen there. The contractor is hired by some entity inside of the state. Some entity inside of the state. And told, we want your excavator and the driver for X amount of time to do that. The contractor does up a bill. They do up their invoice, and they send their guy to do the work. That's all. That's not the contractor's business. Wasting my time now, you're wasting the country money. Oh jeez, stop it. Blessings from under the floodwaters. Oh no, RL, oh no. Build the house on stilts, bro. Build the house on stilts. But yeah, everyone in it has a bit of deniability. And yes, Tony the Ambassador, the problem is the cost to replace the bridges. Yes, you are right. But either way, the bridge is going to have to be replaced because the bridges are now washing away. The bridge is closed. 3 of the bridges further down are washed away, and the bridge, one of the main it's the release valve, as it were, for Central. Anyone living in that Couva North, Couva South, California, Perseverance region in Central, a bridge that really helps let off that traffic off of the highway and the main road. That bridge is closed. That bridge is closed. So the money that you didn't want to spend to fix the bridge first, you still have to spend it anyway. It's the same idiocy we see with the paving of the roads and Wassa, you know. It's the same thing we see with the paving of the roads and Wassa, where Wassa complains. Where we complain that the roads are bad, and as soon as the road is paved, Wassa comes and digs up the road to do works. And Wassa complains that as soon as the pavers pave the road, their pipes get damaged, and I'm thinking, like, don't they work for the same people? Can't they somehow coordinate this thing to allow it that they could somehow work this out? Because the money is being spent badly anyway. Tony the Ambassador says any work they do is really a bandage for a bigger problem. There needs to be a comprehensive look at our infrastructure. Here's the thing, Tony the Ambassador. And here's why I don't believe this. I remember once upon a time, as I tell people, I have my fingers and limbs in different areas. So I dabble in construction, more than dabble. I do some construction. And I remember one lady was renovating her kitchen. And as she was renovating her kitchen, she was saying, you know, she did some work previously at 2 years before, and then she's doing some work again on it. But she says, I'm gonna do over this whole kitchen next year, And I'm like, well, you're paying me to do the work, so it's up to you. But you're thinking about this, and you're like, you're spending more doing the patchwork than you would to just spend the thing to do it over anyway. So the Bailey bridges that they have to keep putting over and over and over, and then the Bailey bridge would fall into the river, and they'd come and put another Bailey bridge, and then that one would fall into the river, and they'd put another one, and then the cost of the loss of productivity in the country, that is immeasurable. All of that cost there in just the plaster methods. Does it make any sense? Wasa infrastructure is built so stupidly. Wasa digging a swimming pool in St. Helena as we speak. Darlan Rice says, hey, blame Kamala. Well, there are things you could blame Kamala for, but I mean, the idea that, to me, the idea that you could blame one person for the bad is not a good idea, because it's what they use to attempt to take credit for all of the good too, and it doesn't work like that. They can work together, but how can overtime money run? Wasa is trouble. Good night, Anika Best. All is well. RL says, well, you see, here's the thing. A lot of modern engineers have already left the country. So you think it's a lack of expertise? You think we don't have engineers who know how to engineer in Trinidad and Tobago? You, like, honestly, you think that's the problem? And you think that's the problem? I don't feel so. Oh, Sylvan. And so we left with these ancient contractors. Nah, bro. I don't believe that. I don't believe that, because the world is so small, and money works the same in every country pretty much. If we were offering the right prices for the work, the people would just take the work. So I don't think it's a lack of expertise. There are lots of engineers qualified all around the country. All around the country. We aren't lacking engineers. We are exporting engineers right now to Guyana as they're building their oil and gas industry. They're using Trinidadian engineers. We have engineers, expats in Saudi Arabia right now, all around Africa, etc. And this isn't to say that they're all out the country. I'm not talking about people who emigrated. I'm talking about people who are working there, but they live in Trinidad and Tobago. And so I don't buy that we're lacking expertise. And he says, I would like to know, when we're discussing the trans situation in school, just need an idea. The trans situation in schools in Trinidad and Tobago. I was unaware, Amani, you could inform me, but I was unaware that in Trinidad and Tobago, there's a serious trans issue in the schools. There is, and if there is, I would assume that's on the students' side, as in students and their FAD. If it's on the teachers' side, that's where it gets scary to me. Trans education in which school? In Trinidad and Tobago? I would love to see that. You know, talking about that, let's jump into some education topics as you're talking about that. And Trinidad and Tobago's education system is not supposed to run like that. That's not the way the entirety of our education system is supposed to look. Nathan, the more closely I look at this system, the scarier it looks. Correct, sir. Correct. Very correct. Very, very correct. But our education system is not exactly supposed to run like that. There is supposed to be some independence between the boards, at least on the denominational side, and the government. And that allows, to me, a good bit of the saving grace in our moral culture in Trinidad and Tobago, because we still have religious denominations in charge of educating massive swaths of our youth, which is, I think, a good thing. I think that's a good thing, at least in terms of relative. As in, if we had to choose between the state educating them and religious boards educating them, personally, I will choose religious boards. I know some people may argue with that, but I disagree. I don't think states are structured in a way to engender morality. Morality is within the domain of the religious. It's not within the domain of the state. And children grow with moralizing. There are rules in schools. There are rules in schools, and rules are based on morality. You don't have rules without some kind of morality. So schools do impart some kind of morality on children. And if a school has to imprint some morality, I would much prefer the morality of a religious board, which they dwell in the realm of morality, than the morality of the state. The state dwells in the realm of politics. They dwell in the realm of what is popular. And we're seeing that in the United States. And that's why I think like this trans issue is creating such a massive issue in the United States, because it is coming from the state, and the United States has ended up in a position where the vast majority of their children are just educated in the public school system. Now they are now pulling up the handbrakes and looking and like, wait, we didn't recognize that our public education system was being run by these insane people. And they're now noticing that. And if you look at the homeschooling rates in the United States, they just went like pew, shooting upwards because people are recognizing that. But in Trinidad and Tobago, as I was saying, our education system is not exactly supposed to run like that. But I regularly say this: the PNM government, if any government is to take over and become authoritarian and just take control of everything, it would be the PNM government. They believe in the power of the state, that the state has the power to create a committee, to create a board, create a group, create an institution to do this job. That's how PNM runs the country. And they're trying to do it with the education system currently. They're trying to do it currently with the education system. My eldest will be attending a TIA. Americans don't have to worry about flooding, hurricane, and potholes. Americans have too much free time. Some American states have significant natural disasters, just by the way. Some American states do. But let's jump into this story. Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, new teacher interview process against Concordat. The Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, in a legal letter to the Teaching Service Commission, TSC, on Monday has raised concerns over the new interview process for the recruitment of teachers for the nominational schools. It believes the new process goes against the Concordat. The SDMS added that if the TSC did not respond by Friday at 4 p.m., it would be forced to commence legal action by way of judicial review. In the letter, the SDMS said while receiving senior counsel advice in March, it received an email from the Ministry of Education with a spreadsheet of 700 candidates to be considered for primary school teaching vacancies. The ministry then invited the denominational boards of management to provide their recommendations for the listed applicants within 21 days. The letter said in reviewing the spreadsheet, the SDMS recognized the names of candidates that it had already interviewed and submitted for consideration to the TSC. It then chose 70 candidates from the spreadsheet, as the SDMS saw no harm in making those recommendations because it was already determined who had an acceptable moral and religious character. All right, so the way how the Concordat allows it is the board, the religious board, the denominational board that is in control of the denominational school is allowed to have strong say on picking some of the teachers for that school. Obviously, that's how they get to retain the culture of the school. They want to make sure, and the word they have, the phrase they have there is the phrase used. They want to make sure that the teachers they select have an acceptable moral and religious character. That's how they keep their schools religious schools. Understandable. So the ministry, the Teaching Service Commission is in charge of hiring teachers. So if you want to become a teacher, you go and apply to the Teaching Service Commission. They have the list of names. They send the list of names to the board, and the board says, okay, we already know some of these people on the list because we have already seen them and selected them and sent those names to the Teaching Service Commission already. So we already know them. So we'll select the ones that we have already chosen before. All right. The letter claimed the TSC then asked the SDMS to recommend individuals of exceptional character to serve on an interview panel for the teaching positions. But the SDMS issued a notice to all principals, notifying them of the TSC's request and advising them not to agree whether approached directly or indirectly. The letter said the SDMS took the decision because it believed the TSC was attempting to usurp the role and function of the denominational boards, assessing the moral and religious suitability of proposed applicants. It claimed the TSC was going against the Concordat, an agreement signed in 1960 between the government and religious bodies for the schools. And here's what the SDMS is worried about there. And this, I spoke about this in a previous live, where we spoke about this same issue that the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha arose before. The Teaching Service Commission through the Ministry of Education is trying to create a board. And this board would interview the teachers and select the teachers to be appointed to schools. That's the PNM way. You get a committee, you get a board, you get a group. The state chooses that group. You pick qualified people. And I'm not saying necessarily that the PNM has malintent in how they're doing this. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. Because they asked the SDMS to, send some people. So maybe the SDMS would have sent some, the Presbyterian board would have sent some, the Catholic board, etc., etc., etc. Different schools, you have the stakeholders, each send representatives, and they all come together, and the state puts together a board, and then this board on behalf of the state would select the teachers. But here's the problem. You are now moving this away from the sole purview of the denominational board. This is now no longer the denominational board that gets to choose this. Now they must all come together and under the watchful eyes of the state make this choice. To me, I agree with the SDMS. Like, if we're being reasonable in Trinidad and Tobago, which schools perform better? The government-run schools or the denominational-run schools? Obviously, the denominational-run schools. And if that is so, no problem, man, Sylvan. Stay safe out there. Stay safe. And if that is so, would we want to make the denominational schools more like the government schools, or make the government schools more like the denominational schools? Would it make sense for the government to attempt to take more control of the denominational schools, or would it actually make more sense? Like the SDMS head spoke about this when Dr. Rowley spoke about the education system creating gangsters. He said he would be happy if the government would give him 5 Rivers Junior Sec, 5 Rivers Secondary. Maybe we should be looking to do some of that. Give some of the troubled schools over to the denominational boards. Let them run the schools, because obviously they're better at it than the government. Ariel says, what standard are we comparing to? Government schooling system is already a failure. Well, we're comparing them with each other. That's what we're comparing to. It's not like we're talking about, okay, we have the denominational schools, we have the government schools, and then we have some magical grammar school that we're going to transform it to. No. These are the two schools we have. Okay, if you're saying the denominational schools are bad, maybe, but the government schools are worse. Either way. So if we have to try to make one more like the other, we should be making the government schools more like the denominational schools. Not giving the government more control over the denominational schools. That does not make sense. But that seems to me kind of down the line of where our present administration views things. It's a view that the state would have if the state sees themselves as being able to solve a problem. It's the sad reality of government. Government creates a problem. And in order to solve the problem, the government sees that they need more money to reinvest more to solve the problem. And then when that doesn't solve the problem, what they need is more money to invest more. And then let's look at this one. Let's look at this. Education Ministry, revision program, not a knee-jerk reaction. The Ministry of Education, in a statement sent on Monday, denied claims that the expansion of its vacation revision program was a knee-jerk reaction to a decline in the performance of students in the secondary entrance assessment examinations. It said the VRP, along with the ministry's remedial education program, ongoing in 106 schools, 80 primary and 26 secondary, were tangible actions taken to address the long-standing issues of student achievement and equity in educational opportunities. So they're saying it's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. This vacation remedial program that they're doing here. No. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's just a reaction to what we saw happening that we took pretty quickly. But not a knee-jerk reaction. No, not a knee-jerk. Good night, Ronnie. No, not a knee-jerk reaction. Not a knee-jerk reaction at all. And this is what I'm talking about. So, government schools by and large are failing. Primary schools are failing. The government schools by and large are failing at SEA. In 2010, of the 17,625 students who wrote the SEA, 32.5% scored under 50% and 11.6% under 30%. These figures remain generally within this range over the last 12 years, with notable fluctuations happening last year. It added in 2021, 47.7% scored below 50% and 17.7% scored below 30% in 2021. So here's the thing. The government education system, the public education system is heading in the wrong direction. More children are failing by the year. By their own statistics, more children are failing by the year. So, would the solution to this be giving this government more resources and more time with the children? If with the resources and children they currently have, it's going in the wrong direction, what makes us believe giving them more resources and more time, they're going to fix it? It's like if you go by a mechanic. I remember someone a while ago, I remember someone told me this. They went by a mechanic. They went by a mechanic and they pulled up the mechanic to solve a problem, and they saw the mechanic YouTubing the problem, and at the end of the day that mightn't be too bad of a issue, but they're wondering, hey, do I know more than you about this whole mechanic business? And if you go by a mechanic who doesn't know how to fix your car, giving him more money and more time isn't going to magically make him know how to fix that car. If you carry an Aqua, a modern hybrid, by a mechanic who last fixed a Cortina in 1960, he just doesn't know what to do with these modern vehicles. He just doesn't know. You could give him all the time in the world and more money, and it's not going to solve that issue. He has to change what he knows and how he does what he does. If the public education system isn't changing how they do what they do, just pumping more resources into it seems like a foolish thing. Teaching styles need to change, obviously, Tony the Ambassador, obviously, because it's failing as is. The ministry also raised concerns over the performance of younger primary school students. Data from the national test administered to students in standard 1 and 3 over the years 2010 to 2018 also showed less than optimal percentages of students with a satisfactory level of numeracy and literacy. I remember, and I made a video about this, where I was speaking to a senior person inside of education, senior guy, and he was telling me that this remedial revision program they're attempting to do doesn't make sense because they're targeting the wrong age group. Most of these young children weren't lost at 12 when they wrote SE. Most of them were lost somewhere down at 6. If you really want to do that kind of remedial program, you got to start younger, way younger. Militant Rockstar says 30 and 40 students in class is insane as well. I agree. Now, this may be a good time to drop the sponsor as usual. Every night, this is sponsored by Mindful Education, which is the educational institution that I run. We offer learning pods for students. Our learning pods are, we offer homeschool style teaching. That's the aim of our style of teaching, homeschool style teaching, with 6 students per pod. And our pods, we work not on age range but on learning range. So we have preschool, we have early primary, we have late primary, we have early secondary, we have late secondary, and with smaller groups, much closer, they're able to ask questions more, they're able to get more familiar with each other, all of that. Ultimately, learning pods, to me ultimately, that's going to be, as I see, a lot of education in the future. Instead of these massive schools, a lot of people will do away with that and get things much smaller and more private. It's more reasonable, and it's much less expensive than you think. Currently, for the pods that we have running, they're not, we don't have any full-time pods right now because we don't have any full-time students right now. My daughter may be one of the first full-time students in that way, but for the part-time pods, the cost that we run is $400 for the month. So if you are interested, you can hit us up at Mindful Education on Instagram, or message me wherever you see me. That's Mindful Education, or message me. Not a problem. Oddly, that was the success of the Roman legions. Exactly. It exactly was that. And in the learning pods, I've noticed this. I've been teaching for a while now, and within these pods, what you recognize is that what is offered to the students there is impossible for a teacher to do in a school. It is impossible. Some students need someone to sit with them and explain the concept. They're just not linking the, okay, I'm seeing on the board, you're going from here to here. You're okay, all right, okay. So we're adding two digit numbers. All right, we add 6 and 8. Okay, I could add 6 and 8. That makes 14. But do I put the 14 down here? I'm seeing you putting the 14 there. Okay, and you cross off what I'm not understanding. You would be surprised, and sometimes if you understand some of these things, it could seem so simple to you. Like, no, we carry the 14 up here and we cross it out and we put the 4 down here and we cross the 1 and we put the 1 over there. And to a child, you're talking French. It makes no sense to them. They need someone to sit them down and explain. When we put the 14 there, it doesn't mean anything extra. We're just putting it there so that we remember it. And it's 10 and 4. And we break down that. And the 4 goes in the 1 column. And we're using that 10 into the 10s column. And in some of those large classes, it's just impossible. And then when you compound that and you compound that, so the student misses something in first year. And then they miss something. And then they miss something in second year, and then they miss something in standard 4, and then they miss something in standard 5, and then they miss something in form 1, and by the time they reach form 4, they are missing. It's like they've built the building. The building is now 20 stories high, but they're missing essential structural parts. Essential steel beams are missing on the first floor. Essential steel beams. So if you're looking at the 20th floor and wondering why it's shaking so much, you can't do anything up there to secure that. There's nothing up there that you could do to secure that. It's not going to work. Steel beams down at the bottom are missing. And Okay, we could talk about how we deal with the people who are already 20 stories high, missing the steel beams, but I think it doesn't make sense that we continue to build poor structures and we engage a multi-million-dollar revision program at 20 stories high to try and patch the buildings then. Wouldn't it make more sense? Even if we said to leave some of them, I'm not saying to leave them, but even if we said that, wouldn't it make more sense to take that money and start down at base level and make sure that as the buildings are built, they're secure? And to me, this was the importance of staying down. I think we should, here's how we solve a lot of this. Bring back staying down, bring back skipping, bring back you cannot leave primary school till you pass the exam. That's what we need. So we could know that, okay, this person hasn't conquered the work of first year yet. Yeah, you might feel ashamed that your child hasn't passed that level, and okay, you could feel ashamed at that, but we shouldn't elevate them to second year level if they cannot keep up with the work. You could deal with your shame some other way. You may be feeling ashamed because you didn't put enough work into your child, and maybe you should feel ashamed. But we cannot just be sending children through the paces. And as a teacher, this is why I'm telling you, I started most of my teaching initially was senior level, A level, CAPE. Most of what I taught initially was CAPE. CAPE biology, CAPE geography, CAPE environmental science, etc., etc., etc. CAPE. Now most of what I teach is primary school level. Because I've seen enough students. To me, I've seen so many students at the secondary level, and you're wondering what on earth happened, because it's evident that this person doesn't understand what they should be understanding. There are students right now in university and they're still reading. There seem to be many 20-story, and okay, that's your reading level, but how are you here? The system failed. Have a good night, Amani. The system obviously failed. You see, staying down wasn't meant to be an embarrassment. It was meant to be a signal that, hey, listen, this guy, this student needs some added attention. They were not able to pass this year. They need some added attention. There's also bribe money that happens sometimes. Bribe for what? You're talking about bribe to go up in standards? Bribe to go up in years? Oh, bribe to go into schools. Oh yes, of course. Without a doubt, I don't deny that. But in creating the every student must proceed kind of mantra that we have created, it fuels that ability much easier. Listen, if you had to bribe the way for your let me not use the word unintelligent. Let's use the word academically challenged child. If you had an academically challenged child and you had to bribe their way into university, and our system had it as such that if you weren't able to pass the form, the standard, you didn't proceed, you would have had to bribe first year, second year, standard 1, standard 2, standard 3, SE, form 1, form 2, form 3, NCSE, form 4, form 5, CXE. The school again to let you in for lower 6, upper 6, both years keep. Then the it's not that it's impossible to bribe all of that, but the bribes would have had to have been racked up a lot more. That bribe money takes them all the way to a really nice job. Yeah. And the reality is there are few things you could do in a system to negate the effect of money and power. There are a few things you could do in a system to do that. And this is why sometimes when people talk about making requirements for things, you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. So in our system, to me, one of the ways that the elites, the wealthy, the powerful, they cap things off for their children is by putting a very difficult and onerous academic requirement. So if you're required to have a master's and a bachelor's in order to get this job, yes, the very intelligent people or the people who work really hard in school, they will get it. But the vast majority of the people who reach that level are the people whose parents have enough money. Because yes, if you are smart and you perform well at school, the rain is really pouring now. I hope you all are still hearing me well. You all are hearing me well over there? Still hearing me well? If you are smart and you work really well at school, yes, you will excel and you will reach high up. Yes, yes, yes. But if you have enough money, it's nearly inevitable that you graduate. If you reach into university and you fail a course, you pay and you do it again. You fail it and you pay and you do it again and again. And once you have enough money, it's kind of eventually, wealthy people always end up with a master's or a degree or something of the kind. It's kind of just paid for. So yes, the very smart ones and the hard workers get there, but it's also a default for the children of the wealthy. So when you have a job that requires a master's in something that is expensive, what that does is it creates a limit here that the wealthy children are by default much easier to get into those jobs. Central, bro. Central Region Waterloo, and that's a private school. I make the sacrifice and send my son to it. Later, my son is 6 years old in September, and he learned to read since he was 3, going on 4, and that's a private school. I make the sacrifice and send my son to a private school for the best. Great to hear, Cardell Drizzy Edwards. The students, we have students that start with us because, as I said, we do from preschool. We have no full-time in the primary school or secondary, but we have full-time at the preschool. And some of the students that started with preschool for us, they learned mathematics, reading at 3 years. And something that we've noticed, some of the students, some of the young children that started preschool with us, excelled to a level they were probably at standard 2 level when they entered primary school. And every single student that entered a primary school was slowed down. If they entered a public primary school, the slowdown was frustrating to watch. A child that has already learned everything from first year and second year, when you go there, you are nearly punished for being advanced in the class. And then you are going to be frustrated throughout your education. Yep. And you're saying private school there, and I'm sure there are really good private schools. We have a learning institution, Mindful Education. I won't call it a school. It's an educational institution. We do learning pods, small intimate classes, around 6 students max is the amount we do. So yeah. But that's the way I see it in this education system currently. You know, I had a lot of politics to talk about tonight, but we went in the direction of education, and I don't mind at all. So yeah, anyone interested in that, you all can hit me up. I think we're making a lot of progress, and recently we started a learning pod for CXC age group, that CXC class kind of level, and that one is very interesting to me. Getting to speak to students at that age, from preschool to CXC. Preschool goes straight up. We don't do age groups, we do learning stages. So if you're 5 years old and you're learning SEA level, you can enter an SEA level learning pod. So the CXC pods, and for one, learning from the students of this year how much they missed with the years of the pandemic. That's something that many adults, I think, could discount. But the Form 5s of this year, the children writing CXE right now, Form 2, Form 3 was basically absent. Or is it Form 3 and Form 4 was basically absent? It's like 3 years of schooling that was totally disrupted from the norm. And okay, there are many criticisms of public schooling, but to me, some of the best things about public schooling were some of the things that we lost during the pandemic. That kind of ability of schools to pass on a kind of epigenetic knowledge where boy, girl, animal place thing TV show total. How many of you have played that game before in school? How many of you have played that game before? It's like a rite of passage. That's where you learn that game for the most part. If you have online school, you don't play that game. The little social interactions that allowed certain lessons to be passed through the generations, they miss that. And it's not even like it was for the sacrifice of better education. It's not even like they learned faster during the time. You know, like if it was that, okay, we killed the social side and I never discount what we lost during those years, never discounted. But if it was that we damaged that social side, but you know, they really excelled in the educational academic side, then fine, maybe. But they regressed at the academic side. And we lost untold levels on the social side. I learned that game from my teachers, exactly Militant Rockstar. And lots of games like that. You take some of those things for granted. So the time in school when you're bored without a phone, where you're supposed to be focused on work, where if you have a good friend group in school, they pull you into more educational activities. We lost all of those things. And that generation won't get it back. Like, the 5 years from 25 to 30 could nearly be interchanged any year for the other. But your 13th year, your 14th year, your 15th, every single one of those teenage years are distinctly unique. Like, I could assure you, as someone in their young 30s, there are many people in their young 30s that aren't sure which number they're on. 33, 4, 32, 34, somewhere there now, boy. I'm 1 year born again, 1990, yeah, that year, whatever age that is now. Bet you that doesn't happen to a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old. Those things matter. And I think some of what we lost there is we never recover in that sense. And we threw it away so flippantly. Anyway, folks. That's all I have for now. We spoke about education tonight. I like education. Y'all could get me talking about education whole night, every night if we start down that road. But yeah, we spoke about education. It was nice. You make smile? Who I make smile there? Alright. Thank you guys for tuning in. If there are no further comments or questions, that's all I have for now. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. This was the Mindful Live. Well, I'm glad I did see. And this was the Mindful Live, and I'll see you guys again for the next one about the what are your thoughts on removing the section 2 in the Math CXE. Section 2, removing it. Why? I don't get it. Why remove it? If I had to have some dictatorial, yeah, I know, but like in terms of why, I don't think it's a good idea. If I had to have some dictatorial moves on CXE, here are some of the things I would have done. I may have cut some of the extra subjects. Like, to me, we don't need CXE offering 30 subjects. I'm sorry. Sorry to be the bearer of that bad news if someone doesn't like that. But when we're talking about a Caribbean-wide generalized education council, the Caribbean-wide generalized education, maths, English, history. Teach us some Caribbean history and we'd have that. Math, English, history. And to me, CXC could squash their other syllabi and broaden their math syllabus. They keep cutting pieces from the math syllabus, and giving some of the students some other stuff that I like. It's not that I'm against learning other things, you know, but I don't think this kind of centralized education is necessary to learn Spanish. Sorry, I don't think that's necessary to learn Spanish. You could go learn Spanish in a month somewhere, pay someone $300 and go learn it in a month. Don't take useful public school time and resources doing that. Sorry, no. My apologies, no. Social studies, bye. You'll get that basic back in primary school. CXC, broaden your math syllabus. Make it much more empirical. Make everything much more empirical on the CXC side. They want to go for multiple choice, I believe. Don't see the plus though. I don't see that working. I don't see that full multiple choice working. And the thing is, CXC's on thin ice. CXC's on thin ice because CXC is basically a private company, and the reason CXC works is because everyone decides it works. If tomorrow morning the employers in Trinidad and Tobago decide that, okay, if Nathan Springer issues a math exam and gives someone a passing grade, we would hire them based on that. The employers decide that. That's it for CXC for a large part. CXC has the power because people have trust in CXC. And I think the more they monkey around with these things, the lower that trust gets. And with the internet and the democratization of information and reach, many people are able to reach a larger number of people much easier. A lot of these things are getting obsolete. For one, many companies aren't even asking you about academic qualifications like that anymore. Like for a company, it might make more sense. They give you a test to enter the company. They test you. Like, instead of I see what CXC tells me, you know, here's what. I'll prepare my own test and I'll give you a website to go and do the test on, and the website will mark it for me automatically. The world is a different world. That is BS, because every year things are repeated. Yes, things are always repeated. But that's the privilege that CXC has, and I think they're abusing that privilege. They'll lose it. They can't broaden the math syllabus because more than 50% usually fail, and I don't think that's because the syllabus is too broad. I think that's because the teaching is inadequate. That doesn't have to do with the syllabus. It doesn't have to do with the syllabus, and shrinking the syllabus isn't going to make that better. You might be surprised. Like, say 60% fail, and you shrink the syllabus, the same 60% will fail. It's like, haven't you planned an event in Trinidad and Tobago? Like, say you have an event starting 8 o'clock. The people that would reach 7:30, there are people who would reach 7:30, there are people who would reach 8, there are people who would reach 9, there are people who would reach 10. You could say, okay, here's what we'd do. We'd start the event 10 o'clock to get everybody there on time. The same people that reached 7:30 would reach 9:30. The people that reached 8 would reach 10. The people that reached 9 would reach 11. The people that reached 10 would now reach 12. It's a discipline issue. You cannot rush the results when it's a discipline issue. You know, I'm using Trinidad because you see the human nature in it, and so many people have this incorrect belief that, okay, if discipline doesn't work, we could somehow rush and gerrymander the situation around it and somehow magically force the proper result in there. It just does not work like that. There's no shortcut to it. There's no other way to do it. It's indiscipline. And shortening the syllabus isn't going to make that any better. All right. I'll see you guys again for the next Mindful live session, which is going to be tomorrow evening, Wednesday, middle of the week. And in the middle of the week, you know, we're talking Tobago. Lots of news coming out from Tobago. Tobago going to be interesting tomorrow. Tobago on fire. Listen, I listened some news from Tobago. Y'all, if y'all don't take in Tobago news, y'all missing out. Let me just let you know. Tomorrow we're talking that. See you all then. Latest, folks. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. Peace. Hold it down.